रति सुख सारे गतमभिसारे रति सुख सारे गतमभिसारे मदन मनोहर वेशम्.
नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्. This is a beautiful shloka that acts as an invocatory verse to Vyasacharya, who has given us Mahābhāratam. Like Bhishma, who is an integral part of Mahābhāratam, we have two other revered persons. One is Dronacharya and second is Vidura. Dronacharya, when we look to the legend which supports his birth, there was a rishi called Bharadwaja, and Bharadwaja had a relationship with a damsel, with an apsara stri called Ghritachi, and the child that was born is believed to have been supported in a petri dish or a jar. A jar is called Dronam. So this child that was born of the jar, which was very unique, I wouldn't say that, see the evidence of in vitro fertilization those days, it was something very similar. So here a child was born of the Dronam, so he was called Drona. So this Drona became an Acharya because he started learning archery and he started teaching archery. So he was called Dronacharya. Incidentally, it is believed that the place where he ran his ashrama to train the princes in archery was the Gurugramam. Gurugram is Gurgaon that we know, near Delhi. So Dronacharya was born of Bharadwaja. He was married to the daughter of a rishi called Sharadvana, who with an apsara stri called Janapadi produced a son and a daughter. One was called Kripa and the other was called Kripi. So Kripi was married to, Kripa's sister Kripi was married to Dronacharya. Dronacharya led a very, very frugal life. His son, he had a son called Ashwathama. He loved his son to a great extent. Ashwathama, it is said, there is a small incident which says that Ashwathama had never tasted how milk will be. He was just given flour milk. At one point in time, when the son desired to have good milk, that is when he thought, let me go seek help from my childhood friend, who's Drupada Maharaja. He was a poor man. Drupada Maharaja was an affluent king. Both of them had studied together. At that point in time, Drupada at a very young age said, see, I am the prince now, I will soon become the king. When I become the king, I will give half my kingdom to you, my dear friend Drona. Drona as a child thought his friend was saying it seriously. So while he became a householder and he wanted to solve some problems in his domestic life, he goes to the court of Drupada and says, I am your childhood friend Drona. Drupada says, okay. This was a big surprise for Dronacharya. He says, I need some wealth. Can you give half your kingdom? He says, when did I say all this? He says, you promised while you were a child. You must be a fool. How could a poor man like you and a rich man like me ever be friends? The world will never approve of such a friendship with such huge disparity. This stung. It was very hurting to Dronacharya, who came back. That is when he started, he was asked to tutor the princes, the Kauravas and the Pandavas by Bhishmacharya. And that's a very interesting incident. In Mahabharata, we have the boys playing with a ball and the ball gets into a well. And while the boys were clueless how to fetch the ball of the well, here comes Drona, who takes a lot of grass together, puts one grass over the other through mantra shakti and pulls it out. So when these boys go and speak with such amazement to Bhishma. Bhishma calls Drona and recruits him as the Raja Guru, the Guru who will train them in archery and other allied sciences. So when the right time came and Guru Dakshina was to be offered, he said, go bring Drupada as a prisoner. The Kauravas volunteered, but they were unsuccessful because Drupada was a great warrior. Finally, the Panchapandavas go, just 5 of them. Arjuna fights. You know how Arjuna was. He just barges into the chariot, takes the sword and says, I will not kill you, Drupada, because you are a revered king. You are the friend of my Guru. I will take you as a prisoner in front of my Acharya. And he brings him before Drona. And Drona says, see, by you losing the battle, all your kingdom is now mine. Now what I will do is, I own the entire kingdom. I will give half of it to you. You take this in arms. And he lets Drupada go off. This was a huge insult to Drupada, who from then thought that I should have a son, I should produce a son who will be able to vanquish Drona in a war. That is when he performed a yaga, and from which arose a very valiant, radiant prince. He was called Drishtadhyumna. The shloka goes like this. Drishtvatva artyamarshitva dyumna dyutsambhavadapi Drishtadhyumna kumaroyam drupadasya bhavatviti. He was called Drishtadhyumna. As a teacher was Dronacharya talented, extremely talented. But was he impartial? No. Mahabharata gives a very clear indication. He did teach the same content to all the students who were studying in his hermitage, but would teach certain extra tricks or tactics to his son Ashwathama. He would do like this, tells Vyasacharya. It seems he would give large pots with narrow openings to all the princes to fetch water from the lake. So when you have narrow openings, it will take more time for the water to get in. While he would give a huge opening ghatam, pot, to his son Ashwathama. Because if Ashwathama would come early, in the remaining 2 minutes before the other princes come fetching the water, he will be able to teach those extra tricks or tactics, shortcuts. But it did so happen while Ashwathama used to come running, at the same pace Arjuna used to come running. He wondered how Arjuna got this. Arjuna said, see, that day you were teaching certain kings about Varunastram. I overheard it, so I used Varunastram to fill water into the pot and did not go till the lake, so I could save time. So he thought, how much ever he did, Arjuna couldn't escape his tricks and tactics. So he started teaching Arjuna as well. So Ashwathama was a beloved son, but Arjuna was a favorite disciple. Nobody could match Arjuna in his concentration, his dedication, his skill. Well, this on one side, Drupada still had great affection towards Draupadi. But again, when I told you about the turning point in Mahabharata, when Draupadi comes seeking justice for what injustice was meted to her, she tells, hey Drupada, hey Drona, please help me. I know that you have got some enmity with my father, but don't use this as an opportunity to feel the happiness about me suffering. I am also like your daughter. So Dronacharya, like Bhishma, did not come to the rescue of Draupadi at that most needed time. If we look at one important incident, of course, in the life of Dronacharya, that causes or that becomes a cause for his death, is in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. I had initially mentioned that one way or the other, he has sowed the seed for his very own death. Where does this incident begin? Of course, his handling of Drupada. Drupada was his friend. He promised he could have been more respectful towards Drona. There are chances that he could have forgotten, but he could have been more respectful. But Drona developed that animosity towards Drupada, saying that I will make him fail in a war, and then he sent Arjuna, the Kauravas first and then Arjuna. So all this made Drupada the biggest enemy to Drona. The closest friends became the biggest enemies. And his not answering to that emergency call of Draupadi in the middle of the Sabha added more animosity in the mind of Drupada. So Drupada was already upset, then you had Drishtadhyumna, and this went on till the end. In Kurukshetra, it was a tough call because Bhishmacharya was made to fall after understanding that he will never fight a woman or a person with some amount of womanhood. That's why Shikhandi was brought into picture. On the other hand, if we look at Drona, Drona had a boon. The boon was, he will never get tired. See, fatigue is something that we can never avoid. Even the best of the athletes, at one point in time, they will feel tired. Getting tired or feeling that fatigue is an animal instinct or a human instinct. But he had attained so much of siddhi through tapasya and boons that he would never ever feel the tiredness. The tiredness was never ever felt by him. This was a big impediment for the Pandavas to make him tired, because he was the next commander-in-chief after Bhishma's falling into the bed of arrows. So that's when Krishna had to optimize. He thought, if he will never get tired under normal circumstances, then I should give him an opportunity to get tired. What was the only way that he could get tired? He had to optimize. Krishna thought and knew for the very fact that Drona had immense love and affection towards his only son Ashwathama. So if something would happen to Ashwathama, that is when he will get tired. So he asked Yudhishtira to look at a dying elephant called Ashwathama and declare in the war that Ashwathama is dead. But Yudhishtira insisted that it is Ashwathama, the elephant, which is dead. So Krishna said, say Ashwathama is dead. The elephant, be like a poet. Ashwathama is dead. The elephant. You say it that way. So Yudhishthira thought it's right to say it. He said, by the time the word elephant could be reaching the ears of Drona, Krishna blew a conch. So that sound kind of masked the word elephant. So when Drona understood that Ashwathama was dead, he got tired and he sat on the ground. That is when Drishtadhyumna jumps out of his chariot and runs towards Drona and beheads him. Again, this of course caused a lot of vengeance in the mind of Dronacharya's son Ashwathama towards Drishtadhyumna and towards the Pandavas. But what we need to understand is Dronacharya does come across as a very talented, a very respected guru with some amount of partiality towards his son that was the cause of his death till the end, and taking promises too seriously and having a vengeful attitude. So compared to Bhishma, we don't see many instances where Drona had conversation with Krishna. Nevertheless, he was also devoted and enjoyed a very friendly relationship with Krishna. So this is Dronacharya. The other character whom we are going to go to is Vidura. Vidura's Purva Janma is traced to a rishi called Animandavya. Animandavya, again some scholars opine that he lived in Nepal. And Animandavya again comes as the person who had a conversation with Janaka. Later in Mahabharata, it is believed that Animandavya was there in the Sabha Mantapam, in the assembly hall of Janaka, to give a discourse on Sakshatkara, how the soul, the Atma can realize itself. But he ended up listening to a discourse. Janaka said, Pradiptayam Mithilayam Name Kinchit Pradahyate. So Animandavya was around Nepal in that region, and Animandavya also comes to a small extent in the Charitram of Sumati, which forms an integral part of Markandeya Purana and also is touched upon in Mahabharata. So while this devout wife was carrying her husband to the house of a courtesan. Apparently the casket dashed against a cage that was filled with needles, in which was Animandavya. So Animandavya cursed him. So all this comes in Markandeya Purana. That is for a later topic that we can take up. So Animandavya also comes in another incident where he was mistaken to be a thief and was put atop a needle. So he asks Yamadharmaraja, what mistake have I done? So Yamadharmaraja tells, in your childhood you used to take small butterflies and used to take the wings of them. You enjoyed that process. So you are punished this way. So that's why a crime that you haven't committed has fallen on you. When Animandavya listens to this, he says, Yamadharmaraja, what children do in their childhood is not something that they do wantedly. Not that they know of Dharma Shastram, they do it just like that. And this is a punishment that you are giving for this. So you have not been giving the right judgments. Your judgments are not at all praiseworthy. O Yamadharmaraja, hence I curse that you shall be born on this earth and you shall suffer humiliation. So this Animandavya was born to Vedavyasa through the maidservant of Ambalika. Since he was born of a maidservant, he was the son of Vedavyasa but born of a maidservant. So he always had to face the humiliation at the hands of Duryodhana, Shakuni, that he did not have a very affluent birth. So here we come across Vidura. Vidura means wise. Our pronunciation shouldn't be Vidura. Vidura means a widower, the one whose wife is dead. That man is called widower, and that is called Vidura. Vidura means the one who has got wisdom, who is wise. So he is Vidura. Vidura, despite being Dhritarashtra's younger brother, would give him timely advice. He knew that what Dhritarashtra was doing in many instances was selfish, wrong, and absolutely not praiseworthy. So there is one instance that we can cite, a very strong instance. When Duryodhana was born, Vyasacharya says that the jackals howled. So in those days we had a Nimitta Shastram and Shakuna Shastram to tell these are good omens, these are bad. So when they heard the calls of nature in different tones, Vidura said, this son of yours is going to cause a lot of anxiety to you and to the kingdom. Dhritarashtra asked, what should I do? Vidura said, kill him. See, you may think that I am barbaric, uncivilized, but remember, you are a king, Dhritarashtra. If you were a normal citizen and your son is misbehaved, not much will be noticed. But if a prince is misbehaved and his behavior is not good, then people will get to see what kind of a son you have produced. And eventually, if he becomes the king, the kingdom will be ruined. For the sake of one large world, if you sacrifice a country, there is no harm. For the sake of one country, if you sacrifice a state, there is no harm. For the sake of the state, you sacrifice a district, there is nothing wrong. For the sake of the district, if you sacrifice a village, there is nothing wrong. For the sake of the village, if you sacrifice one person, there is nothing wrong. Do it for the welfare of this world. But Dhritarashtra found this comment very rude. He said, he is my son, the eldest of my son. And of course, he repents later when all things have gone out of his hands. Later, when Duryodhana and his brothers, along with Shakuni, always used to plan to kill Bhima from the boyhood days, they reached a stage where they were adolescents and all the five were to be killed. So upon Shakuni's advice, Duryodhana had created a palace of inflammable materials. It was in a place called Varanavartam. And he persuaded Dhritarashtra to send these five Pandavas there. The Pandavas immediately agreed. They wanted to respect and honor their uncle's words. So they left along with Kunti. As they were leaving the city, Vidura comes and tells two sentences. Prajnaha, prajna pralapajnaha, pralapajnamidam vachaha, Prajñam prajña pralaprajñah pralapajñam vachobravit. After saying this, Yudhishtira stopped. He heard this from Vidura. Vidura continued. He said, Kashaghnaha shishiraghnaschya mahakakshe bilaukasaha na dehed iti chatmanam yo rakshati sajivati. See, Bhishma and Drona were very, very attached to Arjuna. Of course, for his valor, for the love he used to shower on them. Vidura was very, very attached to Yudhishtira because it is believed that Yudhishtira was also a partial incarnation of Dharmaraja, and so was Vidura. Birds of the same feather flock together. The moment these two shlokas were rendered, nobody understood what Vidura said. Prajñaha, prajña pralapajñaha, the one who is learned will listen to the learned, will always act wisely. This was the meaning. The others who were spectators to this thought this is just a general advice. Kunti also thought a similar way. As they left the city, Kunti asked Yudhishtira, see, your uncle Vidura came and told you two shlokas. They were general shlokas, right? Did he mean something? The other Pandavas were also inquisitive. Yudhishtira, what did he say? He said, Kashagnaha, Shishiraghnascha. He said that there are straws of material. With the rays of the sun, they may get burnt. What did he mean? You know what Yudhishtira said? Our uncle has guided us in the path of saving our lives, my dear mother. Please know that the place where we have been asked to go and stay by Duryodhana and his brothers is made of inflammable materials. Our uncle has guided us that it will get burnt very soon. So like rats that manage to escape through the holes of the ground, you too need to find a secret passage to escape for yourself. See, all this has been packed in these two shlokas in a puzzle. So, do we appreciate Vidura's art of putting this into a puzzle, or do we appreciate Yudhishthira's art of deciphering the puzzle? So, Vidura was very supportive of the Pandavas, not because he disliked the Kauravas, but he believed that to a large extent justice was on the side of Pandavas. And while discussing Bhishmacharya and Dronacharya, I did talk about this incident that was a turning point, and that turning point was Draupadi's Vastrapaharanam, correct? She was humiliated. I said Bhishma did not support, Drona did not support, but what about Vidura? Vidura stood. He said, Dhritarashtra, you have to make up your mind. I told you even before the game was commenced that please do not let your sons and your brothers' sons fight through a game such as this, the game of dice. It's high time that you know how to guide your sons, Dhritarashtra. It's wrong. Now that this son of yours has asked Yudhishthira to pawn his wife and she is being brought to the court, humiliated. You are blind, I agree, but don't blindfold yourself even in your emotions. This is wrong. The moment Vidura stood and spoke for the sake of Draupadi, Duryodhana humiliated Vidura and said, you are born of a maid servant and you have the audacity to talk in front of we the aristocrats and affluence? Sit down, he shouted. So Vidura always stood for justice but was always humiliated. Where does his role come later? In Vanaparva, when Panchapandavas go to the forest, Vidura fights for their cause and he comes to the forest and says, see, I have been made a pariah, I have been excommunicated of the kingdom, I'll stay with you people. That is when Sanjaya is sent by Dhritarashtra, who comes and convinces, saying that the king was feeling sorry for all that he has said, he wants you back. And again he goes back because he knew he was duty bound to Hastinapura. Is there some other instance where we come across Vidura's thoughtfulness? See, the Panchapandavas were on an exile of 12 years. They went on an exile for 12 years. The 13th year they had to remain in that year was of incognito. That is, they can never show their identity. It was anonymously that they had to live. So that is why it is called Virata Parva. They went to that kingdom of Matsyadesham and lived under the king Virata Raja's shade, and all of them survived. So at the end of the 13th year, once the 13th year was over, is when we find that Kauravas could recognize the Pandavas. But the Kauravas insisted that they had found or recognized the Pandavas before the completion of the 13th year, because there was an appendix to the rule that before the 13th year, if they were to be found, then they'll have to repeat the 12 plus 1 years again. So Pandavas said, we are sure that we have completed 13 years. This is the astronomical data that I am giving. Nothing could have gone wrong. But Kauravas insisted. So at that point in time, they were housed by their father-in-law Drupada in Kampilya. So here we have the messengers going to Hastinapura to Duryodhana, asking him to part away with Indraprastha, return their wealth back. But Duryodhana was absolutely adamant. He said, nothing doing. They have to do the Vanavasam for 12 years and Ajñātavasam for 1 year again. So Krishna went as a messenger. Duryodhana insulted him and sent him back too. In this process, Krishna wanted to show his firmness. He knew that he was going as a messenger of the Pandavas to the Kauravas, to Hastinapuram. And he was related to Duryodhana. So Duryodhana said, see, you are related to me. I like you a lot. Krishna, you have come as a messenger. That's okay. Put on that message in the court tomorrow. Come and stay in my house. Krishna said, I will not stay in your house. I have come for a certain job. I will not stay in your house. Okay, then choose the house of Bhishma or Drona. Go and stay in their house. No, I will not stay. Then where will you stay? You have to stay somewhere, right? You have denied my house. You have denied Bhishma's house. You have denied Drona's house. Where will you stay? Bhishma Drona vratikramya mamschaiva madhusudana. Where will you stay? Krishna said, I always have one house that welcomes me with unconditional love, Duryodhana. Which house is it? He asked. It is Vidura's hut, hermitage. Kimartham pundarikaksha dugdham vrishabhavojanam Bhishma Drona vratikramya mamschaiva madhusudana Kimartham pundarikaksha dugdham vrishabhavojanam. So, Bhuktam, will you go have food in his ashrama? Krishna said, yes. When Vidura knew that Krishna was coming to his hermitage, he called his wife and said, give me bananas, I will serve Krishna bananas. And as he peeled them off, he will give the peel to Krishna for consumption and put the fruit down. It happened for 1, 2, 3 bananas. The wife came and noticed and she shook Vidura. Vidura, what are you doing? You are giving him the peel and you are throwing the fruit down. Vidura understood what a folly, what a mistake he had committed. Krishna, please forgive me. Krishna said, don't ask for forgiveness, Vidura. This is that love that you have shown. The excitement that you have in you upon seeing me did not even make you realize what you were giving me, whether it was the fruit or the peel. I am not consuming the peel because it has got proteins or minerals or vitamins in it, because it has been given out of love by you. So, Vidura, we of course had an experience of the love Bhishma, the devotion what Bhishma had towards Krishna, Drona had towards Krishna, but Vidura's love was beyond. So here we have the Pancha Pandavas noticing Krishna come as a messenger with no result. Now, when war was the only solution, that is when Dhritarashtra got a bit worried. He sent Sanjaya, his confidant. He said, you go and check how things are. So he goes. Now Krishna wanted to showcase to Sanjaya that we are all united. So he rested while he asked Arjuna to put his head on Krishna's thighs. Arjuna's legs, one of it was on the thigh of Draupadi and the other was on Satyabhama. Yatra Krishnascha Satyabhama cha Bhamini. Looking at the scene, Sanjaya knew that victory was theirs, and he came. and he admonished Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra, what have you done? You've dug the grave for your very own sons. After admonishing him, Sanjaya leaves the court. That is when, in a confused state, Dhritarashtra invites his beloved brother Vidura and says, Vidura, I am very confused. You tell me what I should be doing now. Vidura says it is late, but still as an advisor I will give you certain rules, ethics, that as a king you will have to follow. And he gives a lot of such advices, such verses put together of Niti Shastram, of wisdom, of ethics, of administration, where Vidura puts it together for the sake of his elder brother Dhritarashtra and presents to us. Whether Dhritarashtra has listened or not, we can at least learn and read that portion. This is called Vidura Niti. I spoke about Vishnu Sahasranamam, which is one of the 5 gems. This is Vidura Niti. So Vidura Niti was delivered by Vidura for the sake of Dhritarashtra, but we can enjoy in this world. So Vidura is seen as absolutely a person who stood for justice. Amongst Dhritarashtra, Pandu and Vidura, or even if you consider Bhishma, Drona and Vidura, Vidura stands apart as a towering personality who stood for justice. And his last stages, he takes Dhritarashtra, Kunti, Gandhari and goes into the forest for Vanaprasthashramam. Once they are assured that Yudhishtira was a ruler of that particular region. So Vidura is a great name that needs to be respected. So is the case with Dronacharya and Bhishmacharya. Namaste.
Narayanam namaskritya naranchaiva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam tatojaya mudirayet Yogo shatam kanakashringa mayam dadati vipraya veda vidushecha bahushrutaya Punyamscha Bhārata katham shruniyamscha nityam tulyam bhavati tasya chaiva. Namaskaram. In this course, which is critical analysis of Mahabharata, we have to some reasonable extent analyzed the importance of Bhishma, Drona and Vidura. While we have dealt with such elderly people, we need to now drench ourselves with the 5 important characters, of which the first is going to be Yudhishtira, who is often referred to as Dharmaputra. Yudhishtira was of course born to Kunti and Dharmaraja. He was raised as the son of Pandu, so he was the eldest of the Pandavas. Yudhishthira's role is very, very important, and we shall see a few instances where he proves his affiliation and his respect and his reverence to Dharmam and Satyam. One of the very first instances that we come across is the incident of Lakshagraham. We did speak about that, where a palace was built of inflammable materials, and Duryodhana hatched the plan of sending the Pandavas along with their mother Kunti to that palace, and he had also planned to get them killed. That is when Vidura quietly reads out a puzzle that hints that the palace where they are going to stay is going to get burnt. Prajnaha prajna pralapajnaha. This is the verse that Vidura uses. Here, Yudhishtira, he of course leads his brothers under the care of his mother. They all go to the forests after having escaped from Lakshagraham. There, they see that they've been attacked by a demon. You can call him a cannibal because he was into eating human flesh. He was called Hidimba. Immediately, Bhima goes and fights Hidimba, and at the end of the battle, Bhima wins by killing Hidimba. And in this process, looking at the valor and strength of Bhima, Hidimba's sister called Hidimba, she falls in love with him. While Kunti was a bit surprised and shocked that Bhima had to choose a girl for himself, that too in the middle of the night, when none of his brothers, and especially the brother elder to him, the eldest of all the Pandavas, who was Yudhishtira, was unmarried. In those days, it was not easy for a brother or a sister to get married unless and until his predecessors, his elder brothers or sisters, are married. But Yudhishtira showed a very, very unusual magnanimity in those days, where he said, if this girl has fallen in love with my brother, it's high time that they are married. So we come across Yudhishthira's magnanimity in this episode. Next is, of course, the major incident of getting the Rajasuya Yajnam done. Rajasuya Yajna was a sacrifice that will be performed when a king wishes to do the housewarming and to prove the efficacy of him as a Kshatriya. Krishna was the guide throughout the process. So he advised Yudhishthira as to how to make friends with kings. And that is when came the topic of Jarasandha, wherein Bhima took over the responsibility under Krishna's guidance. And while all the kings were either through Samadana, Bheda, Danda, they all reached the newly built palace of Indraprastha, which was earlier called Khandavaprastha. Yudhishthira was very happy to have offered his pranamams and obeisances to Krishna. Of course, Shishupala Vadha happened, and we also come across Yudhishthira feeling a bit dejected. He didn't show that to his audience, he didn't show that to his guests. As soon as they left, there is an incident. This comes in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is not found in Mahabharata, where Yudhishthira asks Narada. He says, Sir, I have heard for very, very long time that the Lord is absolutely impartial and disinterested. He doesn't show that this person is closer to me while the other isn't, because to the Paramatma there is no such disparity or discrimination. But here we find the person whom we love and trust, Krishna, showing his absolute wrath on Shishupala. Is this admissible? That is when Narada takes up the responsibility to delineate the charitram of Prahlada in the 7th canto. He says, Gopyaha kamad bhayat kamsaha dveshat chaidyo dayo nripaha sambandhat vishnaya snehad yuyam bhaktya vayam vibho. So as soon as the Rajasuya Yajna was done, Duryodhana had the intention to seize the wealth of the Pandavas. That is when again he hatched a plan with his uncle Shakuni to invite Yudhishthira for the game of dice. And he for very well knew that Yudhishthira, as a law-abiding Kshatriya, will never ever deny the call for a game such as this, being gambling. And he very well for the fact knew that on his behalf it will be his uncle Shakuni who will be playing, and Shakuni was an expert in the game of dice. So as all these things were said, Yudhishthira did come and he played the game of dice. Here is where some scholars opine. Yudhishtira, as a person who adhered to rules and dharma and who would always seek counsel of Krishna, should have thought of Krishna and should have consulted Krishna and should have brought Krishna in. Well, in such a hypothetical scenario, we wouldn't even be discussing Mahabharata, for such a war would have never happened, because the root cause of a war was the humiliation that was meted to Draupadi. The humiliation meted to Draupadi was because the game of dice was played. And why was it played? And why was it lost by the Pandavas? Because a person like Krishna on their side would have matched or probably would have overdone a Shakuni from the other side. All this is hypothetical, but this is where we say that Yudhishthira could have done this. Now, we are also going to see another important incident after the Vanaparva. It is the Virata Parva. The Vanaparva portion has a significance of Yudhishthira, which we will be discussing very soon. In the Virata Parva, which was 1 year of incognito, where they had to live in anonymity, it is said that Yudhishthira lived like a sannyasi, a Tridandi sannyasi. He was called Kanka, and he was engaged in teaching as well as practicing, rehearsing the game of dice with the king of Matsya Desha, the Virata king. So, in this Virata Parva as well, there are two instances when Kichaka tries to humiliate Draupadi, and Yudhishthira, with his past experiences, tries to stop her humiliation. He is insulted, but even then he accepts that humiliation as a part of this year of incognito. Then there is another place where he advises the king that it is Arjuna in the form of a eunuch, Brihannala, who has to be the charioteer to Uttarakumara, the prince of that region. Well, in Vanaparva itself, while they were housed in the forest for 12 years, Jayadratha manages to abduct Draupadi. And Jayadratha was the son-in-law to their house, because the sister to Pandavas and Kauravas, who was Dushala, was married to Jayadratha. So Jayadratha manages to abduct Draupadi, and Arjuna and Bhima catch hold of Jayadratha and bring him to the court of Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira, you know what he says? He says that you should not be killing him, because if you kill him, we will be the cause of the widowhood of our own sister. So you may maximum insult him but never kill him. See, you can find a similarity here. When Hanuman was dragged to the court of Ravana, Vibhishana stood for Hanuman and said, you cannot kill him but you can humiliate him. Same is the case with Yudhishthira, who says that the rule says you cannot kill him but humiliate him. So Jayadratha was humiliated for his act. I did say that I have missed one small portion in Vanaparva which is of extreme significance to Yudhishthira. If there is always a moment for Arjuna, which is the Bhagavad Gita moment, nobody else heard it. There is a moment for Yudhishthira as well. That is the section of Yaksha Prashnam. Towards the end of Vanaparva, probably you can take it as towards the end of the tenure of 12 years of exile in the forests, there is an incident where a Brahmana comes running, a Vedic scholar comes running to catch hold of the Arani stick. Arani stick was a stick that was used to generate sparks, that was used for igniting fires for yajnas and homas. So the Arani stick was taken away by the horn. It was fitted in the horn of a deer that was trying to scratch itself against the bark of a tree. So while the Arani stick was taken, this Brahmana comes seeking asylum at Yudhishthira, saying that please get that stick back for me. So as these brothers keep chasing the deer goes into the hiding. And they were panting for breath and they were super thirsty. That is when Yudhishthira commands the sons of Madri, one of them, to go fetch water. Because they see a lot of birds going around in a certain place, then those kind of species, Sarasapakshi, denote that there is water there in abundance. So he goes there, he doesn't return. Next was the turn for the other brother. He goes, he doesn't return. Next goes Arjuna, he doesn't return. Next goes Bhima, he doesn't return. Dhaumya is in there. Dhaumya was a chief protector, guide, Agnihotri there. He was in there. So Draupadi was again left all alone, and he comes. Yudhishtira comes to the spot to find all his 4 brothers lying flat, unconscious on the ground. Then he thinks either all of them would have consumed the water here and then fallen, or something must have happened. Let me also consume. If death is the rule of the day, order of the day, I am ready to accept it. I am ready to embrace death. So he starts consuming the waters of the lake. That is when he hears an ethereal voice that says, if you have to consume this waters, which is actually my property, answer these questions. While the other brothers argued with that voice, Yudhishthira thinks for a minute and says, I'm sure you must be some divine person. Can you showcase yourself? That is when Dharma Devata comes in the form of a crane and says, I have a few questions. Can you answer them? And that is when a volley of questions is thrown, one after the other, and Yudhishthira patiently answers every question. This patience, perseverance, that coincidental or that instantaneous intellect, wisdom that is showcased by Yudhishthira is unparalleled. Imagine he has left his wife there, his 4 brothers are lying unconscious on the ground, and he is answering every possible question. And there are over 124 questions here. So I have chosen a few questions to give you a glimpse of how Yudhishthira wins as a very, very patient, cultured, seasoned, intellectual Kshatriya. There is one question. I'm just taking a few. Indriyarthan anubhavan buddhiman loka pujitah sammatah sarvabhutanam uchvasan ko na jivati. Indriyarthan anubhavan, the one who loves the experiences through his senses. I love what I eat. I just love the pizza. I just love the lasagna. I absolutely am in mad with the smell of the perfumes that I buy. I like the best of music. Either I'm a fan of Indian classical, Carnatic or Hindustani music, or I like pop, jazz. I like Harry Belafonte, the Beatles of those days. I like Pink Floyd. I like Rammstein. So I am experiencing such pleasures through my senses. Indriyarthan anubhavan buddhiman. Along with that, I'm intelligent. Isn't all this a very unique combination? Buddhiman. Loka pujitaha. I'm also respected by people. Sammataha sarvabhutanam. I'm acceptable to all beings. Forget humans. Even dogs and cats love my presence. Uchvasan. I'm breathing. I'm loved by all. I'm loved by human beings. I'm loved by animals. I'm respected by all. I absolutely take pleasure from the senses. Everything is there. Kona jivati. But yet I'm dead. How is it possible? I'm breathing. I'm having all of this. Who is that? Who is dead? Despite breathing, despite being respected by all, despite being respected by animals, despite enjoying the pleasures of his senses, is there someone? And you know what Yudhishthira says? Devata atithi bhrityanam pitrunam atmanaschayaha na nirvapati panchanam uchvasan na sajivati. Well, all that is there, but these 5 things are very important. Devata, the one who doesn't believe that there is a supreme force, energy, Paramatma. I don't offer my obeisances to that supreme force. Atithi, I don't offer my respects to the incoming guests to my house. Bhrityanam, I don't treat the maids who serve me and my house properly. Pitrunam, I don't offer my timely ablutions to the Pitrus, my forefathers. Atmanaschayaha, I am not dedicating time to realizing the Sakshatkara through my Atma. Nan nirvapati panchanam uchvasan nasajivati. I breathe, yet I don't live, because I do none of these 5. So, to this question that includes 5 characteristics with that blot saying that that person doesn't live, the answer is, if you don't do any of these 5, that person doesn't live. This is one question. He asks 124 such questions. Let's take up a few more questions. Kim svidatma manushyasya. Who is the Atma to a human being? Manushya. Atma is that subtle sentient matter that lives within us. Where is that Atma? That's absolutely obvious even to a person who hasn't read Vedanta. This is my material body. My Atma is within me. Right? Will somebody ask where this human being's Atma is? It is within me, right? But Yudhishtira doesn't even mock at the question. He could have said, "Oh Yaksha, I thought you're being such a great person, but why are you asking such a ridiculous question?" He didn't remark. Neither did he say, "Pass." You know what he said? Putra Atma Manushyasya, the son or the daughter. We may assume that Putra indicates only the son, but in Sanskrit grammar, Putra also indicates the daughter. So Putra, son or the daughter, is the Atma to a human being. How? Because he was reminded of a Veda statement that time, Vedic statement. Angadangat sambhavasi hridayat adhijayase atma vai putranamasi. Vedās tell that the father must pamper his son or daughter by saying these things. Angadangat sambhavasi, every part of yours is just like mine. Hridayat adhijayase, your thought process is very much like that of mine. Atma vai putranamasi, it seems to me as if my Atma is within you. So he was reminded of that. So he said, to a human being, the Atma is his son or daughter. So such questions, one after the other. Let's take a few more questions as samples. Upajivinam kim svidasya. To us, we human beings, what gives us sustenance? What is able to sustain us? He thinks and he says, Upajivanam cha parjanyaha. Parjanyaha sasyashalini, we say in our shlokas. See, whatever said and done, how much ever we work and earn, it is for that morsel of food that we have once, twice or thrice a day. And food doesn't jump from heaven. It has to grow on earth. And whatever food be it, if it has to grow on earth, it needs water. And water doesn't come from anywhere. It needs rains. So precipitation, rain that we get from clouds, that falls on hills, that comes as waterfalls, rivers, lakes, all of its sources or traces its path to the rains. So rains is what sustains human beings. Upajivanam cha parjanyaha. Then he asks, Kaha shatrur durjaya pumsam. Who is the enemy, or which is the enemy which is very tough to conquer? Very tough. That enemy must be super strong. We may be wondering if it is this country in Asia, if it is that country in Africa, if it is that country in North America. No. Who is that enemy? Krodha durjaya shatru, anger. The anger that we get, it is very tough to conquer. You may be wondering, oh, this man is saying probably he is conquered. Absolutely not. I am just telling you what answer Yudhishtira gave. I don't even know the answers to such questions without reading Yaksha Prashnam. What an intelligent person Yudhishtira must have been. And how primitive we are. Winning over anger. It isn't as simple as it is sounding. There is a ritual that happens every year. You all would have noticed. Where people who have undergone the sacred thread ceremony change that every year. It's called Upakarma. And on that day, there is a statement that you will have to keep chanting, which is Kamo Karishit, Manyu Karishit. The person tells that this last 1 year that I have spent, I have done many acts which are illogical, untenable. You know who did that? It is actually not me. Kamo karushit, the desire that has been burning in me has made me do that. Kamo karushit. What else? He continues. Manyuva karushit. It is the anger which has instigated me to do that. So either we blame it on desire or anger. So he says, Krodha sudurjaya shatru. Now, there are a few questions. I'll just take one sample. It's a pair of questions. Look at the style of these questions, how Yaksha asks. Nastika kascha uchyate. Who is a Nastika? Asti in Sanskrit means is there, exists. Na is no. Na asti means not there. Asti is there, exists. Na asti is not there. Na plus asti is nasti. The one who keeps projecting himself, telling every now and then for some reason or the other, not there, doesn't exist, is referred to as Nastika. On the contrary, if a person keeps telling it is there, it exists, he is called Astika. So the question is, Nastikaha kascha uchyate. Who is a Nastika? You know what is the answer he gives? He says, Nastiko murkha uchyate. You know who is a Nastika? A Nastika is a fool. Murkha. Next question. Ko murkhaha? Yaksha asks, Ko murkhaha? Who is the fool? To which Yudhishtira says, Nastiko murkha uchyate. A fool is a Nastika. What was the earlier question? Who is a Nastika? The answer was, the Nastika is a fool. Now who is a fool? The fool is a Nastika. So Yaksha tries to position the question to check if there is consistency in his answer. And Yudhishthira maintains that. And every now and then, at least if I remember twice or thrice while asking questions, he will ask, okay, you tell me, I will give you a boon to let go of your brothers. I won't kill you, you leave now. But Yudhishthira wouldn't leave. He said, you ask all your volley of questions, I will patiently answer. I will not leave this place. This was to test Yudhishthira's selfish or selfless intentions. Then comes a question. Ahanyahani bhutani gachanti hayamalayam seshasthavaramicchanti kimascharya param. He asks, what is surprising? To which Yudhishthira says, see, day in and day out we find people dying. They would have spoken to us today morning. But the person who has spoken to us this morning is no more. Life is that uncertain. Uncertainty is the certainty of life. When life is such uncertain and we find people whom we have moved with, who have nurtured us, whom we have grown up with, they all die day in and day out. They all die in day in, day out. We keep looking at their bodies, but we still assume in our minds that I am going to remain immortal because our actions, our thoughts, our feelings don't even exemplify that we have even thought about this internally. So Yudhishthira says, your question was what is surprising? This is surprising in this world where the human being continues to see people around him die, yet continues to assume that he is immortal. Then he asks, what is news? Tell me, sir, what is news? Asmin mahamohamaye katahe suryagnina ratri divandhanena masadudarvi parighattanena bhutani kalap pachatiti varta. Prithvi vibhandam gaganam pidhanam. There is a huge vessel where the earth is a container, sky is the lid. There is a stick that you need to stir it with. There is fire that keeps heating up the container. The fuel sticks needs to be inserted and removed because as it is inserted, it burns bright. As you slightly move it away, it brings it down. It's like the day and the night, the 6 seasons, the 2 ayanams, all of this keeps happening and we are all getting cooked. That's news, he says. So this entire process of Yaksha Prashnam tells how patiently Yudhishtira has withstood the toughest of the times. Now, at the end of the questioning session, Yaksha tells, okay, you've answered these questions wonderfully, Yudhishtira. Now I'll give you a boon. You can choose to have one of your brothers back in the conscious state. Choose which brother you want. Yudhishtira says, after thinking, that I will choose Nakula. This was very surprising because Bhima and Arjuna were his own brothers. They were of the same mother. And you know Bhima's strength and you know Arjuna's victory spree. He chose none of the two. He said, I want Nakula. Nakula and Sahadeva were his stepmother's children. But he said, I want Nakula. Why? Asks Yaksha. See, to my mother Kunti, we were 3 sons and I'm the eldest of the 3. I know that my stepmother Madri is no more, but I'm sure she is watching us from somewhere. Her 2 sons are Nakula and Sahadeva. She will be upset when she sees the eldest of the sons of Kunti alive and none of her sons alive. That is why I'm choosing the eldest or the elder of her 2 sons, who is Nakula. This is where Yaksha says, even in such times of calamity, look at how your thought process works. Yudhishtira, I am blessed to ask questions to you. May all your brothers come back to life. This was the offer given by Yaksha. So, Yaksha Prashnam is a wonderful episode in the entire Mahabharata that showcases Yudhishtira. Because we may be wondering, Yudhishtira was a person who always shied away from wars because we have never seen him say that we have to fight. We have to be very careful. Arjuna, Bhima were always of the opinion that we have to fight with the Kauravas and get our property and our prestige back. Yudhishthira would keep telling, let's find ways to avoid the war because war is going to cause a lot of collateral damage. So he would send messengers, he even made Krishna the messenger. He tried his level best to avoid the war. Whereas Arjuna and Bhima were of the opinion that war should be there. But when it came for the time of war, Dharmakshetre, Kurukshetra, that point in time, you know what Arjuna did? He said, I won't fight because people who are standing opposite me are my relatives. So when it was needed, Arjuna said, I will not fight. But when it was needed, Yudhishtira did not back out. So probably this is one of the reasons why he was called Yudhishtira, the one who is very stable in times of war. Yudhishtira, one of the very less celebrated of the Pandavas, because we don't celebrate him to the extent of Arjuna and Bhima. But Yudhishtira had his own ways of wisdom and a very, very judicious way of giving judgments. See, when a person who adheres to dharma, who knows the nuances of dharma, when he becomes the king, the quality of justice is at its zenith. And Yudhishtira is a towering example of how a king should be. And that is why when Yudhishtira was made the king of Hastinapura, Bhishma was absolutely convinced that the kingdom is back in safe hands. So he's a mixed bag. At times we may feel he sticks too much to rules, but overall he is one of the very, very seasoned, cultured prince of all the Pandavas and Kauravas put together.